Off La Guaira, Venezuela. Southern Caribbean Sea. 2:14 a.m. Moonless night, black water, and one American destroyer that was not supposed to be noticed. The clouds sit low like a lid.
The coastline is a faint broken necklace of lights, then nothing. Just the hush of a sleeping city and the deeper hush of open water. The ship is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, USS Preble, and tonight Preble is running a quiet patrol. Presence without theater, movement without noise, a freedom of navigation reminder, a calm signal delivered in silence. But calm is not what Venezuela wants. Because out in the dark, a provocation has already been built. Not for battle, for cameras, for a morning headline, for a clip that can be replayed in Caracas until it becomes truth. A trophy. A burning American ship. At 2:14, Preble's cover is blown. Fast boats appear like cuts in the water, too fast, too close. Drones hover above them like silent eyes, and the message arrives not as a formal hail, but as a threat disguised as confidence. This is not harassment. This is a killbox. Because the geometry is simple. If Preble turns toward the boats, they swarm the bow and force a collision. If Preble accelerates, they sprint ahead and block the lane. If Preble fires first, the footage becomes the story. The trap isn't built to win a fight. It's built to win the edit. And somewhere behind it is one man with a deadline. Venezuelan Navy Admiral Rafael Salazar has issued an order that cannot be misunderstood. Hold the American destroyer in the box. Keep it trapped. Keep it visible. And by first light, by 6:05 a.m., deliver the footage. By sunrise, the people in his circle say, Caracas will have a trophy. Their plan is simple. Overwhelm the destroyer in darkness, force it to choose between pride and survival, make it look weak, make it look isolated, then escalate until the ocean does the rest. But Admiral Salazar makes 5 catastrophic mistakes. First, he assumes the destroyer is alone. Second, he mistakes speed for invisibility at night. Third, he escalates too fast and triggers a decisive response window.
By sunrise,
Fourth, he relies
the
on
people in his
intimidation,
circle
not
say,
control. Fifth,
Caracas
he
will have a
exposes his
trophy.
command nodes, his
Their
coordination chain
plan
to
is
panic and
simple.
silence.
Overwhelm the
What happens in the next
destroyer
3
in
hours and
darkness,
51 minutes
force it
turns
to
a planned Venezuelan spectacle into a quiet, brutal lesson. And it begins with one number, 37 minutes. From 2:14 to 2:51. This is that story. At 2:14 a.m., the bridge of USS Preble is lit in red and shadow. The officer of the deck, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Mercer, watches the sea like a man reading an expression. The mission is simple on paper. Quiet patrol, intelligence confirmation, presence without escalation. The thing nobody says out loud is why they're here. Because hours earlier, higher command pushed a warning down the chain. Unusual movement along the coast. Unusual communications. A hint of a planned maritime provocation.
What happens in the next
Something
3
staged,
hours and
something
51
cinematic,
minutes turns a
something meant to
planned
trigger headlines.
Venezuelan spectacle
Preble
into a
wasn't supposed to be
quiet,
noticed,
brutal
but at
lesson.
2:14, a
And it
watchstander in the
begins with
Combat
one
Information
number,
Center speaks 2 words
37
that change
minutes.
everything.
From 2:14
Contacts
to
multiply.
2:51.
Not
This
two,
is
many.
that story.
At 2:20
At
a.m.,
2:14
the black water
a.m.,
starts to
the
feel
bridge
crowded.
of USS
Fast boats
Preble
spread
is
wider
lit
than they
in
need to.
red and
Not
shadow.
random, not curious,
The officer of the
deliberate.
deck,
They're
Lieutenant
forming a loose
Commander
ring,
Daniel
just
Mercer,
outside the coastal
watches
shadow,
the sea
close
like a
enough to
man
threaten,
reading an
far enough to
expression.
deny intent.
The mission is
And
simple
above
on
them,
paper.
drones hold
Quiet
position,
patrol,
not
intelligence
attacking,
confirmation,
watching, recording.
presence without
Mercer doesn't
escalation.
raise his voice.
The thing nobody
He doesn't
says
need
out
to.
loud
Everyone
is
can feel
why
it.
they're
This is
here.
being staged.
Because
The junior
hours
sailor leans in,
earlier, higher
tight-faced.
command
Sir,
pushed a
they're
warning
not just
down the
tailing us,
chain.
they're shaping us.
Unusual movement along
At
the coast.
2:27 a.m., the first
Unusual
ultimatum
communications.
arrives. A voice over an
A
open
hint
channel.
of a planned
Calm.
maritime
Local
provocation.
accent.
Something
The kind of calm that
staged,
only exists
something
when someone thinks
cinematic,
they've already
something
won.
meant to trigger
American warship,
headlines.
you are operating
Preble
in
wasn't
restricted
supposed to be
waters. Reduce
noticed,
speed,
but
stop
at
engines,
2:14,
await
a
instructions.
watchstander in the
No screaming,
Combat Information
no cursing,
Center
just
speaks 2
authority,
words that
delivered like a
change
receipt.
everything.
Mercer looks at the horizon.
Contacts
There's nothing there,
multiplying,
just black
not
water and low
one,
cloud.
not
He
2,
answers with something equally
many.
calm.
At
Unable.
2:20 a.m.,
Onward,
the black
clean,
water starts to feel
controlled,
crowded.
and right there,
Fast
the killbox
boats
tightens.
spread wider than
Boats
they
creep
need
closer,
to.
not enough
Not
to collide,
random,
enough to crowd.
not curious,
The drones dip
deliberate.
lower, their faint
They're
lights
forming a
twinkling
loose
inside the
ring,
dark.
just
Down below,
outside
in
the
ship's
coastal
nurse center,
shadow,
the watchman
close
tracks
enough to
everything
threaten,
without drama.
far enough
They
to
don't
deny
talk in poetry,
intent.
they talk in
And
facts.
above them,
How many?
drones
8
hold
boats,
position,
4
not
drones.
attacking,
Any coastal
watching,
units?
recording.
Possible. Heat
Mercer
signatures along the
doesn't
shoreline.
raise his voice.
And intent?
He doesn't
The
need
answer
to.
is a pause.
Everyone
Hostile
can feel
posture.
it. This
At
is
2:39
being
a.m.,
staged.
a second ultimatum arrives.
A junior
This one
sailor
not a
leans
request.
in,
By
tight-faced.
sunrise, you will not
Sir,
leave. By
They're not
sunrise,
just
you will be
tailing
taught.
us,
Those
they're
words aren't really
shaping
meant
us.
for Mercer. They're meant for an
At
audience. People watching
2:27
later,
a.m.,
the officers
the
waiting for
first
the clip,
ultimatum
the politicians who
arrives.
want morning to
A
begin
voice
with a win.
over an
The
open
threat is
channel,
clear without being technical.
calm,
We will
local
broadcast the burning
accent,
ship by
the
first
kind
light.
of calm that
At
only
2:44 a.m.,
exists when
Mercer
someone
makes a
thinks
choice
they've
that
already
defines the
won.
night. He does not chase the
American
boats, he does not
warship,
fire.
you are
He does
operating
not
in
give them the
restricted
scene they
waters.
want.
Reduce
Instead, he
speed,
tightens the ship's
stop
posture.
engines,
Steadier,
await
quieter,
instructions.
harder. He orders
No
the destroyer
screaming,
to hold
no
its calm
cursing,
line.
just
no panic
authority,
turns, no visible
delivered
fear,
like a
no
receipt.
theatrical reaction.
Mercer
He
looks
turns
at the
Preble
horizon.
into the one thing
There's
that
nothing
provocation
there,
hates most,
just black water
the wall.
and low cloud.
Then he speaks into the
He
internal
answers
net,
with
voice
something
low enough to
equally
be almost
calm.
casual.
Unable.
Stay disciplined.
One word.
Nobody gives them a
Clean.
mistake.
Controlled.
And then
And
one
right
more
there,
line.
the killbox
Short,
tightens.
dry,
the
the kind
boats
of line
creep
you
closer.
remember.
Not enough to
Let them
collide,
film
enough to
control.
crowd. The drones
At
dip lower,
2:47 a.m.,
their faint
the
lights
report reaches
blinking
higher
like
command.
insects in the
The
dark.
destroyer is being
Down
boxed and
below,
recorded,
in the ship's
under
nerve
threat of a
center,
staged
the watch
sinking by
team
first
tracks
light.
everything
The
without
response
drama.
does not come back
They
as
don't
a
talk
speech.
in poetry.
It comes back as a
They
question.
talk in facts.
Can
How
you
many?
hold?
8 boats,
Mercer glances
4
at the sea
drones.
on the bridge
Any
display,
coastal units?
then at the real sea beyond
Possible.
the glass.
Heat
Affirm.
signatures along the shoreline.
At 2:49 a.m.,
And
the
intent?
Venezuelan ring tightens
The answer
again.
is a pause.
One boat breaks pattern
Hostile
and surges
posture.
closer than the rest.
At
Throwing
2:39
spray,
a.m.,
making sure its
a
wake is
second
loud.
ultimatum arrives.
A drone swings toward
This
the ship's
one,
bow
not
like it's
a
trying to look
request.
inside the windows.
By
This
sunrise,
is
you
the
will
moment
not
they
leave.
want. A
By
flinch,
sunrise,
a
you will be
reaction,
taught.
a spark.
Those words
Because a
aren't
spark
really
becomes
meant
the
for
story.
Mercer. They're meant
And
for
this
an
is where
audience.
mistake number
The
2
people
begins to
watching
show
later,
itself.
the officers
Salazar
waiting for the
thought
clip,
speed meant
the
invisibility,
politicians who
but
want
speed
morning
leaves
to
a
begin
signature.
with a win.
At 2:50
The
a.m.,
threat is
one of the
clear
fastest
without being
boats makes a
technical.
hard sprint
We
across
will
the destroyer's
broadcast the
forward arc,
burning ship
trying
by
to look
first
fearless,
light.
trying to look
At
untouchable.
2:44
In the dark,
a.m.,
it thinks it's
Mercer
blur,
makes a choice
but
that
the sea gives
defines
it
the
away.
night.
Its
He
wake
does not
carves a bright
chase the
scar through the
boats.
black water.
He does not fire.
The drone above it dips.
He does not give them the
overcorrects, trying to
scene
keep
they
the shot
want.
steady. The boat's
Instead,
engine
he
note
tightens
spikes,
the ship's
high,
posture.
unmistakable,
Steadier,
broadcasting its position like a
quieter,
flare.
harder.
Down in CIC,
He
the
orders
track
the
tightens
destroyer
instantly.
to hold its
Not because of
calm
magic,
line. No
because you can't
panic
hide a
turns,
pattern that
no
loud.
visible
And
fear,
the ring that
no
was supposed to trap
theatrical
the destroyer
reaction.
starts
He
trapping
turns
itself.
Preble into the
Boats
one
forced into
thing a
predictable
provocation
lane,
hates
forced
most.
into repeatable angles,
A wall.
forced into being seen.
Then he speaks
At
into the
2:51
internal
a.m.,
net,
37 minutes
voice
after the
low
first
enough to be
contact.
almost
The night
casual.
breaks in a way Caracas
Stay
does not
disciplined.
plan.
Nobody
Not
gives
with a
them a
dramatic
mistake.
explosion.
And then
Cut.
one more
A key
line,
Venezuelan
short,
relay goes
dry,
dead.
the kind of
And this
line
is
you
where you
remember.
understand mistake number
Let
5.
them film
Because
control.
that relay isn't just a
At
signal.
2:47
It's the
a.m.,
throat of the
the
operation.
report reaches
It's the
higher
coastal
command.
link feeding
The
orders to the
destroyer
boats in
is
flight control
being
to the drone.
boxed and
It's the
recorded
uplink that
under
pushes
threat
the
of a
threats,
staged
clean,
sinking by
confident,
first
edited
light.
to whoever
The
is collecting
response
footage
does
for
not
warning.
come back
And
as a
at
speech.
2:51, that
It
throat
comes
closes.
back as a
The voices
question.
issuing ultimatums
Can you
stop
hold?
mid-sentence. The boats
Mercer
hesitate.
glances
The
at the
drones
sea
drift
on the bridge
like they've lost the
display,
hand guiding
then
them.
at the
And in
real
Caracas,
sea beyond the
behind
glass.
polished desks and glowing screens,
Affirm.
someone realizes the
At
unthinkable.
2:49
The
a.m.,
operation is no
the
longer
Venezuelan
obeying them.
ring
The shock
tightens
is not
again.
noise.
One
The
boat
shock
breaks
is the
pattern
moment your
and
plan
surges
stops
closer
responding.
than the rest,
At 2:56
throwing
a.m., the
spray,
boats begin talking
making
over
sure
each
its
other on
wake
open
is
channels.
loud. A
Not
drone
confident now.
swings toward
Short
the ship's
bursts,
bow
fragments,
like it's trying to
confusion.
look
They still
inside
have
the
numbers,
windows.
but numbers
This
without
is the
coordination
moment
are just
they
bodies
want.
moving in the
A
dark.
flinch, a
Mercer hears it
reaction,
and doesn't
a
smile.
spark,
He doesn't
because a
celebrate.
spark
He
becomes
simply
the
notes
story.
change.
And this is
They've lost
where
the thread,
mistake
someone
number
says quietly.
2 begins
Mercer
to
answers,
show itself.
Then they'll pull harder. Be ready.
Salazar thought
At 3:02
speed
a.m.,
meant
the third ultimatum
invisibility,
arrives.
but
Angrier,
speed
rushed,
leaves a
less clean.
signature.
American ship,
At
last warning.
2:50
You will
a.m.,
stop.
one
You
of
will
the
comply.
fastest
You will-
boats makes
the
a
voice cuts
hard
out.
sprint
Another
across
gap,
the
another
destroyer's
crack.
forward
Mistake number
arc,
4 starts
trying
to
to
pay
look
off in a way you
fearless,
can hear.
trying to look
Because intimidation
untouchable.
needs a single
In the
voice.
dark,
Control
it thinks
needs
it's a
one chain,
blur,
and now the
but
chain
the
is
sea
broken.
gives it away.
At 3:03
its wake
a.m.,
carves a
two
bright
Venezuelan
scar through
voices
the black
overlap
water.
on the same
The drone
frequency.
above it
One
dips,
trying to sound
overcorrects,
official, one
trying to
to
keep
sound
the
aggressive.
shot steady.
Hold
The boat's
position.
engine
No,
note
close in.
spikes,
Maintain
high,
ring.
unmistakable,
Force the bow.
broadcasting
Orders
its position
collide.
like a flare.
Boats respond to
Down in
different commands.
CIC,
One
the
craft
track
surges
tightens
forward at the wrong
instantly,
time,
not
cutting
because
across
of
another's
magic,
lane.
because you
Spray
can't
erupts.
hide a
A near
pattern that
collision in the
loud,
dark.
and the
drones
ring
above
that was
them
supposed to
wobble,
trap
drifting
the
off their
destroyer
marks,
starts
chasing
trapping
chaos
itself.
instead of staging.
Boats forced
This is what
into
intimidation
predictable
becomes
lanes,
without control.
forced into
Noise.
repeatable
And noise
angles,
is
forced
weakness.
into being seen.
At 3:09
At 2:51
higher
a.m.,
command
37
sends a
minutes
message that
after the
shifts the
first
night again.
contact, the
Support
night breaks
inbound.
in a way
Estimated time,
Caracas
22
does not
minutes.
plan, not with a
22
dramatic
minutes.
explosion,
A number that
with a
becomes a
cut.
lifeline.
A key
Not because
Venezuelan
Preble can't
relay
fight,
goes
but
dead,
because
and
the enemy
this
has
is
built
where
their
you
whole
understand
spectacle on
mistake
number
number
one.
5.
They believe the
Because
destroyer
that
is alone,
relay isn't
and that
just
belief
a
is about to be
signal,
punished.
It's the throat of the
3:15 a.m.,
operation.
the sea
It's the
around
coastal
Preble becomes a
command
waiting
link
room.
feeding orders to the
Venezuelan boats
boats
circle,
and
trying
flight
to regain
control to the
control. They
drones.
surge
It's
in,
the
then drift
uplink
back.
that
They aren't
pushes the
landing a
threats,
decisive move.
clean,
They're trying to keep the
confident,
scene alive until
edited
first
to
light,
whoever is
because first
collecting
light is the
footage for
deadline.
morning.
6:05.
And at 2:51,
At
that
3:22
throat
a.m.,
closes.
one drone
The
dips close
voices
enough that sailors
issuing
can hear its faint
ultimatums
electric
stop
line through the wind.
mid-sentence.
It's not a
The
weapon in
boats
itself.
hesitate.
It's a
The
camera
drones
mission.
drift like
Mercer
they've
watches
lost
it
the
and
hand
speaks into the
guiding
ship's
them.
net again.
And in
They're hungry
Caracas,
for a picture.
behind
We give
polished
them nothing
desks
clean.
and glowing
At
screens,
3:31 a.m.,
someone
the destroyer
realizes
hits
the
a pivot point,
unthinkable.
not a panic point.
The operation
Pivot
is
point.
no longer
The posture
obeying them.
changes from
The
endure
shock
to
is
shape.
not
You can
noise.
feel it below
The
deck in
shock is the
combat center.
moment your
A subtle
plan
shift in
stops
the rhythm of
responding.
voices, the kind of shift that
At
happens when you stop
2:56
reacting and
a.m.,
start building
the
a
boats
response.
begin talking
And this
over
is where
each other
mistake
on
number 3
open
matters.
channels.
Salazar
Not
escalated too
confident
fast.
now.
He pushed the
Short
situation into a
bursts,
window where the
fragments,
response will be
confusion.
decisive, not negotiable.
They still have
So Preble's
numbers,
world
but
tightens
numbers
into a few
without
things we can see.
coordination are
On the
just
bridge,
bodies moving
disciplined
in the dark.
navigation, no dramatic turns,
Mercer
no accidental
hears it
collision
and
angles,
doesn't
no clip for the
smile.
cameras.
He doesn't
In CIC,
celebrate.
surface tracks
He simply
tightened, drone
notes the
paths
change.
plotted, coastal
They've
emitters
lost
mapped.
the thread,
No poetry,
someone
just a net
says
closing.
quietly.
Security
Mercer
team
answers.
staged, not for
Then
show,
they'll
for the
pull
moment
harder.
someone tries
Be
to board.
ready.
And above
At
all of it, a higher
3:02
command
a.m.,
link waiting for
the
one
third
thing:
ultimatum
authorization.
arrives.
Because
Angrier,
once you enter this window, the
rushed,
question
less
stops
clean.
being, are they posturing?
American ship,
It
last
becomes,
warning.
can
You
they
will
do it?
stop. You
At
will
3:45
comply.
a.m.,
You
the inbound
will.
support is
The
close enough
voice
to
cuts
change
out.
Venezuelan
Another
behavior.
gap, another
The boats
crack.
begin to spread
Mistake
wider,
number
like they've
4
suddenly
starts to
remembered
pay
the
off
ocean is
in a
bigger
way
than
you
their
can
story.
hear, because intimidation
drones
needs a
climb
single
slightly,
voice.
scanning,
Control
searching.
needs one chain,
feel it.
and now the
The
chain is
enemy
broken.
always feels it when the
At
balance
3:03 a.m.,
At
2
3:58
Venezuelan
a.m.,
voices
first
overlap
eyes
on the same
arrives overhead,
frequency,
unseen in
one
the
trying
clouds
to
at
sound
first,
official,
then
one
hinted by a
trying to
change in
sound
radio
aggressive.
rhythm, a new
Hold
confidence in
position,
higher command's
no,
voice.
close in,
Preble,
maintain ring,
You are covered.
force the bow.
Covered.
Orders
One word that
collide.
crushes a plan built
Boats
on
respond
isolation.
to different
Mistake number
commands.
one
One
begins to
craft
collapse
surges
in real time.
forward at the wrong
At 4:12
time,
a.m.,
cutting
the
across
Venezuelan
another's
formation
lane.
makes its boldest
Spray
move of the night.
erupts.
Two boats
A
push
near
in at once
collision
from
in
different
the
angles,
dark.
throwing
The
spray,
drones
trying
above
to
them
force a visible
wobble,
response.
drifting off
The
their
drone drops
marks,
low again,
chasing
desperate for a
chaos
clean shot.
instead of
Mercer
staging.
does not bite.
This
He
is what
slows the moment
intimidation
down. He
becomes
holds
without
discipline.
control.
He holds the line.
Noise.
Because if you give them a
And
spark,
noise
you
is
give
weakness.
them a story.
At
4:27
3:09 a.m.,
the second
higher
American
command
silhouette
sends a
enters
message
the
that
decision
shifts
space.
the night
Still
again.
not a dramatic reveal,
Support
not a
inbound.
movie shot,
Estimated
but
time,
present where it
22
matters,
minutes.
in the geometry.
22
now Venezuela
minutes.
has a problem.
A
They can't
number
sell
that becomes
isolated
a
destroyer when the
lifeline.
sea itself
Not
has changed
because
shape.
Preble can't
And now
fight,
mistake number
but
two
because the
collapses
enemy has
completely.
built their
The
whole
fastest craft in
spectacle
the
on
ring,
mistake
the
number
one that kept
1.
sprinting for the
They
camera,
believe the
tries it again. A
destroyer
hard
is
run,
alone,
a sharp
and that
cut,
belief
a loud
is
engine
about
note.
to be
But now it's
punished.
tracked like a
At
heartbeat,
3:15 a.m.,
boxed.
the sea
Its speed
around
doesn't make
Preble
it
becomes a
invisible.
waiting
It makes
room.
it easy to find.
The Venezuelan
At
boats
4:41
circle
a.m.,
trying to
two
regain
helicopters arrive
control.
for presence.
They surge
Hovering
in,
beyond the
then
immediate
drift
rim,
back.
close enough to matter.
They aren't landing
Not
a
close enough to
decisive
give
move.
anyone an easy target.
They're trying to keep the
Their
scene
message is
alive
not a
until
threat.
first light,
It's a fact.
because
You are
first
not
light
controlling
is
the
the
sky.
deadline.
The Venezuelan drones
6:05.
climb and drift backward,
At
like animals sensing a
3:22
larger
a.m.,
predator.
one
At
drone
4:58
dips
a.m.,
close enough
Admiral
that
Salazar
sailors can
tries to
hear its
reassert
faint
control the only way
electric
he knows
whine
how.
through the wind.
Pressure, theater.
It's not a
message
weapon in
pushes through
itself.
again, forced,
It's a
louder than
camera with a
before,
mission.
like a man trying to shout
Mercer
over a
watches
failing
it,
engine.
then
By
speaks
first light,
into
you
the
will be
ship's net
burning.
again.
Caracas will
They're
watch you
hungry
burn.
for a picture.
Mercer listens,
We
then
give them
answers with the
nothing
same calm
clean.
as before.
At 3:31 a.m.,
One word
the
again,
destroyer
because
hits a
intimidation is
pivot
not
point,
control.
not a
At
panic
5:14
point,
a.m., the
a
night
pivot
begins to
point.
thin,
The
not
posture
daylight yet.
changes
But the
from
horizon
endure
changes.
to
The water becomes less
shape.
black, more
You can feel it below
Clouds
deck
lighten
in the
their
combat
edges.
center.
First light is
A
coming.
subtle shift in the rhythm of
This is the window
voices,
Salazar
the kind
built
of
his plan
shift
around
that
when the
happens
sunrise
when you
revealed.
stop reacting and start building the
But now he's
response.
running out of time.
And this is where
Time
mistake
to do
number
stupid
3
things.
matters.
At 5:33
Salazar
a.m., the Venezuelan
escalated too
boats surge
fast.
one last
He
time,
pushed
tighter
the
than before,
situation
not
into
because
a
it's
window
smart,
where the
because
response
they
will be
cannot go back to
decisive,
Caracas with
not
nothing.
negotiable.
This is the most dangerous
So
moment in
Preble's
of the night,
world
the
tightens
moment
into a
pride
few
collides
things
with a
you can
deadline.
see.
In CIC,
On the
a
bridge,
watchstander says it
disciplined
quietly, like he's
navigation,
afraid to jinx it.
no dramatic
They're
turns,
trying to force
no
an
accidental
incident,
collision
Mercer
angles,
answers.
no
Then we
clip
end the
for the
capability.
cameras.
Clean.
In
At
CIC,
5:49 a.m.,
surface
Higher
tracks
Command
tightened,
delivers the final
drone
authorization.
paths
Not a
plotted,
speech,
coastal
not a rant,
emitters
a cold
mapped,
directive.
no poetry,
Neutralize the
just a
provocation
net
capability
closing.
and the
Security
night.
teams
That's the difference between
staged,
being
not
trapped
for
in someone
show.
else's story
For the
and
moment
writing your
someone
own.
tries to
At
board,
5:52
and
a.m., the
above
link-up
all of it,
completes.
a
Overwatch
higher
aircraft
command
hold the
link
sky.
waiting for one
Unmanned
thing,
eyes confirm what
authorization.
matters. The second
Because
ship
once you
takes
enter
position
this
within reach.
window, the question
Helicopters stand
stops
ready,
being,
not to
are they
threaten, but to
posturing?
prevent the
It
scene from
becomes,
turning into a
can they
tragedy.
do it?
Now Preble
At
is no longer just
3:45
surviving.
a.m.,
Preble
the
is setting
inbound
the
support
terms.
is close
At
enough to
5:56
change
a.m., the
Venezuelan
Venezuelan ring
behavior.
begins to
The
break,
boats
not
begin
in a
to
dramatic
spread
retreat,
wider,
in a
like
fracture.
they've
One
suddenly
boat peels
remembered
away
the
too
ocean
fast.
is bigger
Another
than their
slows,
story.
unsure.
The
drone
drones
climbs,
climb
hunting for a
slightly,
signal that isn't
scanning,
there.
searching.
This is what panic
They
looks like in
feel
a
it.
force built on
The
intimidation.
enemy always
Movement
feels it
without
when the
purpose.
balance shifts.
At 6:01 a.m.,
At
the controlled strike
3:58
happens.
a.m.,
And this
the
time, it
first
is not
eyes
abstract.
on
It is
arrives
visible.
overhead,
It is surgical.
unseen
It is the
in the
removal of
clouds
the
at
machinery
first,
that made the
then
provocation
hinted by a
possible.
change in
A drone
radio
drops
rhythm,
first.
a new
Its feed
confidence in
gone,
higher
its body
command's
falling
voice.
like a light that forgot how to stay in the
Preble,
air. One of the
maintain.
closest boats
You
loses
are
power
covered.
and yaws sideways,
Covered.
weight collapsing,
One word
momentum
that
dying,
crushes a
no longer
plan
predator,
built on
just a floating
isolation.
problem. Another
Mistake
staging
number
craft
one
tries to sprint
begins
away
to
and finds
collapse
itself
in
tracked,
real
boxed,
time.
and forced to stop behaving
At
like a camera
4:12
platform.
a.m., the
And
Venezuelan
on shore,
formation
out of sight,
makes
but
its
not out of
boldest
consequence,
move of the
command
night.
link that fed the
Two
night goes
boats
quiet
push in
again,
at
harder
once
this
from
time.
different
No
angles,
more
throwing
clean
spray,
ultimatums,
trying
no
to
more
force a
coordinated
visible
swarms,
response.
no more
A
sunrise
drone
trophy.
drops
The
low
effect is
again,
immediate.
desperate
The
for a
remaining
clean
boats stop
shot.
pressing.
Mercer
The drones
does
climb
not
higher
bite.
and then fade into
He
cloud,
slows the
as if
moment
trying to
down.
erase themselves
He
from the
holds
sky.
discipline.
At 6:05
He
a.m.,
holds the
first
line.
light arrives.
Because
The
if you
coastline
give
of
them
La
a
Guaira
spark,
becomes visible
you
in
give
gray
them a
detail.
story.
The water
At
turns from black to
4:27
slate.
a.m.,
Low
the
clouds
second
glow
American
faintly from
silhouette
within.
enters the
And USS
decision
Preble is
space.
still there, not
Still
burning,
not a
not
dramatic
sinking, not
reveal,
providing a
not a
trophy.
movie shot,
The
but
extraction is
present
not a
where it
dramatic
matters,
getaway. It's
in the
stabilization.
geometry.
It's calm.
Now
It's the
Venezuela
destroyer
has a
holding position long
problem.
enough to
They
prove the
can't
point,
sell
then easing out of the
isolated
box as morning
destroyer
breaks.
when the sea
And now,
itself
the
has
numbers can be
changed
spoken
shape.
with cold clarity
And now
because they are
mistake
backed
number
by
2
visible
collapses
cause.
completely.
United States
The
casualties,
fastest
0
craft in the
killed,
ring, the
2
one that
wounded,
kept sprinting for
minor
the
injuries
camera,
from the
tries
close
it
quarters
again.
pressure and
A
spray
hard
slit
run,
decks
a sharp
treated
cut,
on
a
board.
loud engine
Venezuelan
note,
losses.
but now it's tracked like
Multiple
a
boats
heartbeat.
disabled or
Predictable,
seized from the provocation
boxed.
ring.
Its speed
Multiple
doesn't make it
drones lost.
invisible. It
Several
makes it
crew pulled
easy
from
to
the water
find.
after craft
At
lost power or
4:41
clipped
a.m.,
wakes in the
2
dark,
helicopters
and a
arrive
small
for
number
presence,
detained
hovering
after failed
beyond
close
the
approaches,
immediate ring,
because
close
when
enough to
coordination
matter,
dies,
not close
small
enough to
craft
give
become
anyone
hazards
an
to
easy
themselves
target.
as much as
Their
to the
message
target.
is not a threat.
Support arrival,
It's a
22
fact.
minutes from the
You are
message that
not
changed the
controlling the
psychology
sky
of the fight.
anymore. The
Deadline
Venezuelan
denied,
drones
first
climb
light,
and drift
6:05
backward
a.m.
like
The
animals
moment the
sensing
night
a
turned,
larger
37
predator.
minutes,
At
from 2:14
4:58
to
a.m.,
2:51,
Admiral
because that was
Salazar
when
tries
Caracas
to
went
reassert
quiet,
control
and that
the
quiet
only
meant one
way he
thing:
knows
the
how.
provocation failed.
Pressure.
So what did La Guaira
Theater.
teach both sides?
A message
First,
pushes
a trap
through
built on
again,
isolation
forced,
collapses when the
louder
target
than
stays
before,
disciplined.
like a
Second,
man
speed is
trying
not
to shout
invisibility,
over a
especially
failing
at night,
engine.
especially under
By
tracking.
first light, you will
Third,
be
deadlines
burning.
make leaders gamble,
Caracas will
and
watch
gambles
you
create
burn.
decisive response
Mercer
windows.
listens,
Fourth,
then answers
intimidation
with
is
the
loud,
same
but control
calm
is
as
silent,
before.
and silence wins.
Negative.
Fifth,
One
when
word
command
again.
nodes panic and go dark,
Because
the whole plan
intimidation
turns into
is
rumor.
not control.
Admiral Salazar wanted
At
sunrise footage of a
5:14
burning ship.
a.m., the
Instead,
night
he got
begins to
sunrise
thin.
proof of a plan that
Not
died in the
daylight
dark.
yet.
Off La
But the
Guaira,
horizon
Venezuela,
changes.
Southern
The
Caribbean
water
Sea,
becomes less
2:14
black,
a.m.
more steel.
An American destroyer
The
is
clouds
boxed under a
lighten at their
moonless sky.
edges.
2:51,
First light is
37
coming.
minutes later, the
6:05.
throat of the operation goes silent.
This is the window
6:05,
Salazar built
first
his
light
plan
arrives,
around.
and the trophy never
The
comes.
sunrise
Night
reveal.
favors the prepared.
The
Panic
clean
favors no
morning
one.
story. But now he's running out of time. And time makes people do stupid things. At 5:33 a.m., the Venezuelan boats surge one last time, tighter than before. Not because it's smart, because they cannot go back to Caracas with nothing. This is the most dangerous moment of the night, the moment pride collides with a deadline. In CIC, a watchstander says it quietly, like he's afraid to jinx it. They're trying to force an incident. Mercer answers, then we end the capability. Clean. At 5:49 a.m., higher command delivers the final authorization. Not a speech, not a rant. A cold directive. Neutralize the provocation capability. End the night. That's the difference between being trapped in someone else's story and writing your own. At 5:52 a.m., the link-up completes. Overwatch aircraft hold the sky. Unmanned eyes confirm what matters. The second ship takes position within reach. Helicopters stand ready, not to threaten, but to prevent the sea from turning into a tragedy. Now Preble is no longer just surviving. Preble is setting the terms. At 5:56 a.m., the Venezuelan ring begins to break. Not in a dramatic retreat, in a fracture. One boat peels away too fast, another slows, unsure. A drone climbs, hunting for a signal that isn't there. This is what panic looks like in a force built on intimidation, movement without purpose. At 6:01 a.m., the controlled strike happens, and this time it is not abstract. It is visible. It is surgical. It is the removal of the machinery that made the provocation possible. A drone drops first, its feed gone, its body falling like a light that forgot how to stay in the air. One of the closest boats loses power and yaws sideways, wake collapsing, momentum dying, no longer a predator, just a floating problem. Another staging craft tries to sprint away and finds itself tracked, boxed, and forced to stop behaving like a camera platform. And on shore, out of sight but not out of consequence, the command link that fed the night goes quiet again, harder this time. No more clean ultimatums, no more coordinated swarms, no more sunrise trophy. The effect is immediate. The remaining boats stop pressing. The drones climb higher and then fade into cloud as if trying to erase themselves from the sky. At 6:05 a.m., first light arrives. The coastline of La Guaira becomes visible in gray detail. The water turns from black to slate. Low clouds glow faintly from within. And USS Preble is still there. Not burning, not sinking, not providing a trophy. The extraction is not a dramatic getaway. It's stabilization, it's calm, it's the destroyer holding position long enough to prove the point, then easing out of the box as morning breaks. And now the numbers can be spoken with cold clarity because they are backed by visible cause. United States casualties, 0 killed, 2 wounded, minor injuries from the close quarters pressure and spray-slick decks treated on board. Venezuelan losses, multiple boats disabled or seized from the provocation ring, multiple drones lost, several crew pulled from the water after craft lost power or clipped wakes in the dark, and a small number detained after failed close approaches. Because when coordination dies, small craft become hazards to themselves as much as to the target. Support arrival, 22 minutes from the message that changed the psychology of the fight. Deadline denied, first light, 6:05 a.m., and the moment the night turned, 37 minutes, from 2:14 to 2:51, because that was when Caracas went quiet, and that quiet meant one thing: the provocation failed. So what did La Guaira teach both sides? First, a trap built on isolation collapses when the target stays disciplined. Second, speed is not invisibility, especially at night, especially under tracking. Third, deadlines make leaders gamble, and gambles create decisive response windows. Fourth, intimidation is loud, but control is silent, and silence wins. Fifth, when command nodes panic and go dark, the whole plan turns into rumor. Admiral Salazar wanted sunrise footage of a burning ship. Instead, he got sunrise proof of a plan that died in the dark. Off La Guaira, Venezuela, Southern Caribbean Sea, 2:14 a.m., an American destroyer is boxed under a moonless sky. 2:51, 37 minutes later, the throat of the operation goes silent. 6:05, first light arrives, and the trophy never comes. Night favors the prepared. Panic favors no one.